Recording. Oh, wait, look at the participant numbers jump up. That's crazy. All right. Welcome, everybody. You see the numbers just keep going up and up. We're at 105 participants. $109. Thank you for joining us. Oh, we got a raised hand from Becky. Becky Burr. Let's see. Go ahead, Becky.
I can't see my square and I can't rename me. Why is that?
It's probably because you're in the webinar format. So right now, based on the format of how we're doing the training, you don't have to turn your video on or your mic. So you could just kind of sit back and kind of just watch until we have a time for answering questions. And then we'll allow people to either voice their questions or take them directly from the Q&A at the bottom.
Well, last year I didn't get my certificate because I couldn't fix my name and they didn't recognize my email. So if that happens again, I hope it doesn't. But you know, being here for 2 hours and not getting my certificate via email was very disappointing.
Yeah, so last year we weren't passing out certificates. We were recording all the folks that took the training from the Zoom training that was done online. And then for everyone who took the makeup training, who submitted a questionnaire to make up for the training, we got those folks listed. So if you are unsure whether or not you are recorded as taking the training, please let us know or email sdplanninggroups at sandiego.gov so we can check. We'll be putting that list together after tonight's training and then updating that list with folks who make up the training along the way.
So should I log out and put my full name? Is that what I should do? Because don't you just see Becky H?
Now we see Becky Barrera H, but you're as an attendee. Zoom is recording all this in the background, so it's being recorded right now. So we definitely know that you're taking this training tonight.
All right, I just want to make sure I get credit. Thank you.
No problem. Dana, do you have a question? Okay, we're gonna.
This is Dana Hooper, Kearney
Hi,
Mason
Dana.
Group. Hi, can you hear me? And am I in okay?
Yes, we can hear you. And right now, everyone, we're hosting this training through the Zoom webinar. So don't worry that you can't see your faces right now, or
I can see your face.
oh, your faces actually. Can you see your face?
Oh, okay. No, I
Yeah.
can't see my face.
So you're
No.
gonna see us. You're gonna see us. We're gonna be presenting tonight. So yeah, just kind of I just relax, and then we'll be starting in just a minute or two. I mean, for the other folks with hands raised too, just a reminder, we are using Zoom webinar, so you're not going to be able to see your faces. We'll have an opportunity to take Q&A throughout the training, so we can answer questions then. And just hold tight. And just to let folks know, Zoom is recording this, and we do have a list of everyone in attendance tonight, so you will get credit just so long as you stay for the whole entire training and don't dip out, earlier than you should. Our training is scheduled till 7 o'clock today. And you don't have to provide your name now. I think you can change your name, or you should be able to change your name, or we do have your names listed in your Zoom square. So we have that recorded, and we will be able to give you credit for the training tonight. Okay. Okay. I am going to get ready to start our presentation. I don't want to keep anyone longer than we need to. Let me just get my screens all set up here. All right, let's begin. Let's get started, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the 2024 Annual Planning Group Training. I am Marlon Pangilinan, Program Coordinator with the City Planning Department. Thank you all for being here. This is a mandatory formal training that provides an overview of Council Policy 600-24, which lays out the roles, responsibilities, and standard operating procedures for recognized planning groups, along with information on city planning and decision-making processes. Per Council Policy 600-24, Terms and Conditions, Section 7.4, Planning Group voting members are required to complete the training each year within 60 days of being initially elected or appointed to the planning group, and by no later than June 1st of each succeeding year for as long as the voting member is serving or reelected. This training is required for planning group members to be eligible to serve on their respective groups and for legal indemnification, or in other words, legal protection by the city. Our training is being conducted in the Zoom webinar format, so you will not have to worry about whether to mute, unmute, or show your video. It is being recorded, and so we will be taking into account all your names and the folks attending tonight. We will have an opportunity during the course of the training for Q&A and for all attendees to submit questions during the course of the training by using the Q&A function on your menu bar. As I said, this meeting is being recorded with all those in attendance, so please disable any artificial intelligence assistance. To get credit for the training, you will need to attend the whole duration of the training. A copy of the recording will be made available on the Community Planning Group Resources webpage for reference and to be used for alternative compliance for those who were not able to make tonight's training. We will provide more details and instructions for completing the makeup training when the recording is posted. Also, if you can have your smartphones ready and nearby, we're going to be using them in a few interactive activities and to test your knowledge along the way. So get your smartphones ready. Here is our agenda tonight. I have already covered the introduction along with some details on tonight's format. So next we'll have some opening remarks from our director, Heidi Von Bloom. We'll then get into an overview of the City Planning Department work program, an overview of council policy, the development review process, and what planning groups should know about the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. We'll also have a few online interactivities, as I mentioned, so get those smartphones ready, a break halfway through our training, and opportunities for Q&A. We expect to end by 7 p.m. Right now, I'd like to introduce Heidi Von Bloom, Planning Director of the City Planning Department, who would like to welcome you all with some opening remarks. Heidi?
Thank you, Marlon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some hours with us. I'd like to congratulate those of you that are joining us as newly elected community planning group members, and then say thank you to all of you for your service and your roles in each of your community planning groups. Excuse me. As many of you know, the City Planning Department is responsible for planning for an equitable and sustainable future with affordable homes and good jobs, infrastructure, public spaces for the people of San Diego. Our vision is to be a forward-thinking leader that works together with the people of our communities to find and implement solutions that improve the lives of everybody that lives here. Each of you in your planning group role is part of this. And on all of the work that we do, we rely on each of you to shape what the future of San Diego looks like. The city and our communities are improved when we have as much participation as possible, ensuring that that participation is representative of the demographics of our community. Although we do wish we could hear from every single person that lives across our city and in each of your communities directly, because we cannot do that, we do rely on planning groups and other community-based organizations to help us make those connections. So thank you for your efforts. And I know a lot of the groups worked really hard over the past year to ensure representation and input that does reflect the demographics of the people that live in each of your communities. And then also just really want to thank you for your time, which is a thing that's really hard to come by. And we very much appreciate it. Before I turn it over for the rest of the training, I did also want to thank our department's community planners that are joining us here today, and also let you know that we have an amazing team of community planners that is available to assist community planning groups. So if you do not yet know who your assigned community planner is, my team will make sure that you do. Your community planner is your assigned point of contact. So if you have any questions in your service to your planning group, please feel free to reach out to our team so that we can assist you. With that, I'll turn it back over to Marlon to lead you through the rest of tonight's training. Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. Okay, so that concludes our opening remarks. Thank you very much, Heidi. So now I would like to introduce our staff presenters for our training tonight. In addition to myself, we have Leslie Henniger, Senior Planner, and Matthew Nasrallah, Associate Planner from the City Planning Department, who will be providing an overview on Council Policy 600-24. Providing an overview of the development review process is Martha Blake, Supervising Development Project Manager, and providing what planning groups should know about the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA, is Rebecca Malone, AICP, Program Manager with the City Planning Department. Okay. So now that you know who we are, let's get to know everyone who is attending tonight by jumping into an interactive Wordle activity. A Wordle allows us to gather and share one-word responses that will be shown on the screen in random directions, with most of the popular responses showing as the largest word on the screen. So just to get to know, out of the 178 attendees tonight, let's see what communities you guys are all hailing from. So before we answer this question, I would like you to take out your smartphones and scan the QR code that you see on the screen. Or if you want to use your smartphone, you could copy the URL that's highlighted here, the HTTPS //sandiego.cnf.io/ and stick that in a secondary browser on your computer or laptop, and then click on the annual planning group training session. I'll give you a minute to get to that screen. Okay. And once you are there, you'll see what is our interactive session screen with a City of San Diego menu bar at the top, learning objectives for this training, and evaluate the session button, which will become functional towards the end of the training. And if you would like to provide comments on this training, once we activate the prompt in the presentation, you'll see the question pop up on your smartphones on the screen, and then you can enter your response to our first question, what community you are from. Now, if your community consists of 2 words or more, like City Heights or Del Mar Mesa, please type them as one word, no spaces, and then hit submit. So don't forget to hit the submit button. So let's go ahead and try that. I'm going to go ahead and prompt us here. And so our first question is, what community are you from? All right, look at that. Looks pretty even in terms of the amount of people representing here. Sips Ranch, we got one of the valleys here. So if you, Rancho Bernardo. Look at that, it just keeps going. All right, 183 of us. All right. Great, yeah. Let's keep it going. I think it's all still moving. This is great. This will be recorded too, so it'll be really nice to look at too, because it's very colorful and all jumbled around. Okay, let's try one more. How many years have you been on the planning group? So let's go see who's joining us tonight. If we're looking at some veterans or some very new people. So let's try that question. So if you look at your phones, that question will pop up, and then go ahead and put your response. Some of you put like words in there and the numbers. That kind of works too, because usually they're all just one word joined, okay? And then just, it's kind of all over the place, but these are like one word answers. But if you answer more than one word, it's going to kind of separate those single words. But here it gives us an idea of the level of, or the length of participation of our planning group members. We got folks, I guess with 2 years, like kind of new. We got like a 1-year person, a brand new person, and it looks like we have someone with 20 years. Wow. Wow, thank you for your service for that. That's a lot. So that gives us an idea of who's attending tonight. And again, the training is required of both existing and newly elected or appointed members. So constantly there are changes with council policy. Well, I wouldn't say constantly. We recently had some changes back 2 years ago, and then recently went through the recognition process, which was considered before city council last week. So there are new things to keep in mind and understand with council policy. And at the same time, as issues come up, it's a good idea to kind of look and see how we address those issues, and if needed, make changes to our operating procedures, so long as they're consistent with council policy. So, all right, thanks for participating. Now, I'll ask you guys to kind of keep those screens on your phones, because we're going to have a little bit of testing later on when we get into council policy. But right now, I'm going to continue with our training. And I wanted to begin this part of the training by informing everyone of the City Planning Department's role in achieving Mayor Todd Gloria's strategic plan. This plan includes the following goals: creating homes for all of us, protecting and enriching every neighborhood, advancing mobility and infrastructure, championing sustainability, and fostering regional prosperity. We do this by focusing and promoting our work in the following areas: homes and jobs, equity, the environment, and parks and public spaces. We work in conjunction with other departments, such as the Sustainability and Mobility Department, as well as Economic Development. We also work closely with the city's Development Services Department, which oversees and reviews permitting of development projects, and you'll be hearing from them later on in our training. With everything we do, our department work program is focused on achieving a balance of the following 6 desired outcomes related to our strategic goals: providing for new homes, delivering infrastructure and fostering good jobs, strengthening our climate resiliency and conservation efforts, planning with equity as a focus both in informing our initial efforts and initiatives and final outcomes. This next several slides will showcase a number of initiatives that we are currently working on and have recently finished that meet these outcomes. Providing more homes and promoting jobs is done through our community plan updates, annual updates to the Land Development Code, Blueprint SD, which will be heard at Planning Commission tomorrow, and initiatives shown here related to the housing element. Through the housing element of the city's general plan, it serves as the city's housing plan and provides a framework for how the city will address the state's identified demand to provide more homes in the city. Given the increasing concerns of climate warming, we prepared a climate resilient SD plan to provide strategies to prepare, respond, and recover from potential climate change hazards, like extreme heat, wildfires, sea level rise, and flooding and drought, as well as how to propose investments that can improve local communities and their resiliency. The city adopted climate action plan in 2022, established a community-wide goal of net zero emissions, greenhouse gas emissions by 2035, committing San Diego to an accelerated trajectory for greenhouse gas reductions. To help achieve greenhouse gas emissions reductions, our planning efforts focus on creating opportunities for development near transit, as well as equitably expanding our infrastructure for walking and biking. Regarding parks, we prepared a park master plan that was adopted to make the city's park system more modernized, equitable, and accessible for all residents by moving from a suburban planning approach to an approach that relates to urban development, which the City Council adopted back in 2021. With the goal of increasing equitable access to public parks and open space, the City Planning Department, in collaboration with the Parks and Rec Department, will develop a citywide trails master plan, a park needs index, and Choice Creek Regional Master Plan. With regard to creating public spaces, historically inequitable planning policies and the lack of equitable funding tools have resulted in significant disparities in funding for parks, libraries, public streets, and other public spaces. To address this issue, the City Council adopted the Build Better SD program in 2022 as a citywide initiative to enable the faster delivery of public spaces and facilities equitably and sustainably across the city. The city is currently working on developing an inclusive public engagement guide to ensure inclusive public engagement and community participation for city initiatives, plans, and projects, particularly in communities that have historically experienced barriers to public participation. Participation that is truly representative of the communities is critical to ensuring that we are making decisions in ways that will most improve everyone's quality of life. Our work on public engagement also includes planning group recognition, which was concluded at City Council last week with the recognition of 41 planning groups representing their respective community planning areas. This also includes planning group support, and it includes annual training like this one and assistance with planning group operational questions and issues provided through your community planner. Future opportunities include trainings for planning group chairs, public outreach, and engagement. Another integral aspect of the City Planning Department's work program is a focus on equity and inclusion. So what does equity and inclusion mean? Equity occurs when we eliminate institutional racism and systemic disparities, providing everyone with equitable access to opportunity and resources to thrive, no matter where they live or how they identify. And what we mean by inclusion is the action or state of including or being included with a group or structure. More than simply diversity and numerical representation, inclusion involves authentic and empowered participation and true sense of belonging. Through equity and inclusion, we create opportunities for all San Diegans to participate in the plans and policies that shape our city. We create these opportunities through our Equity Forward program, which is a comprehensive approach to creating a more equitable, healthy, and enjoyable place for all San Diegans. This involves prioritizing investment where we need it most and planning for all. This means in areas that are underserved, where efficiency would result in the greatest number of San Diegans that would be served, and where most growth is occurring. The evolving policies, plans, and processes under Equity Forward will create more equitable opportunities and investments in San Diego, and by acknowledging the effects of policy decisions that have resulted in inequitable outcomes, Equity Forward will leverage the diversity of voices in our city to benefit all San Diegans. So we want to hear from diverse voices and perspectives. Often the same solutions and same way of thinking is not often the best choice to best serve San Diegans. This way of group thinking could prevent resources from the communities that need it most or to those who could truly benefit from it. So we strive to hear from all perspectives for input to be meaningful because the communities are made up of all kinds of people and we need to serve them all. When we hear from diverse voices and perspectives, we learn from others and understand everyone's perspective, which builds awareness between and among stakeholders and decision makers. Overall, this greater understanding has the potential for leading to new ideas, innovative solutions, so that we can serve everyone. All these diverse voices and perspectives are gathered from many sources, like public hearings, where decision makers hear directly from citizens and stakeholders, and community-based organizations that represent and advocate for community needs. Planning groups are one of several channels that are integral for obtaining and providing input from communities. And as I mentioned, the City Planning Department is addressing equity and inclusion as part of its Equity Forward program. This includes several initiatives, including the development of regulations and policies under the environmental justice element, the prioritization of parks and open space, finding the areas of greatest need, ensuring inclusive public engagement and community participation through the creation of an inclusive public engagement guide, and creating partnerships with community-based organizations and other private entities to identify opportunities for greater efficiencies, coordination, and cooperation to encourage community investment. By acknowledging the effects of policy decisions that have resulted in inequitable outcomes, Equity Forward will leverage the diversity of voices in our city to benefit all. So how do we relate this to planning groups? Planning groups play a role in promoting equity and inclusion as well, by serving as a vehicle to represent a variety of interests and perspectives from each community. With council policy, there is an emphasis on diversity and inclusiveness, which translates to proactive efforts by the planning group. Each recognized planning group must gather certain demographic data of existing and new planning group voting members and the community at large. And this is done at the time of elections or other regular periods to measure inclusion and diversity on the planning group. The planning group shall compare this data with the demographics of the community at large, and it may be available from the city or other agency, or gather data that is available from the city or other agencies like SANDAG or the census, and submit to the city as part of its annual report. Another concept for the planning groups is the creation or the inclusion of community participation and representation plans as part of their overall operating procedures. This essentially spells out a planning group's goals for representing diversity in their community, as well as what are their plans for conducting outreach, informing the community, as well as making aware of their efforts to involve the community at their meetings and maintain diversity on the planning groups. Trainings, in regards to training, City intends to roll out training opportunities for the planning group members and chairs in the next year to help provide you and the planning group members resources to implement inclusive public engagement. All right, so I'm going to pause right there. I know I've kind of said a lot about our work program and a lot of other initiatives that we're working on. So does anyone have any questions regarding our work program and how we are doing this through equity and inclusion? So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A. All right, and looking through our Q&A, we have a number of questions regarding people making sure that they are being recorded as taking the training. I can confirm that that is the case. There's a question here from Shane. I would like to know the specific LDC land development code sections that define ministerial and discretionary, along with code sections that provide for ministerial projects to avoid examination by CPGs or planning groups. So that question, I'll ask Shane, I'll ask you to hold on to that one because we're going to have Martha talk about the development review processes, and that would be a good time to answer that question. So we'll come back to that. Let's see here. Will the alternative meeting and training provided tomorrow be the same? It will be similar. We're going to have a recording of this training for people to watch, and then there will be a questionnaire similar to what you're going to be experiencing today that folks taking the makeup training will have to undertake to complete the training. So we'll have instructions for that. We offered a very similar format last year, and we'll have that posted to our community planning group resources webpage. Will we get a copy of the slides? Yes, we will have a copy of this presentation on the community planning group resources webpage along with the alternative training. The links should be also live in that presentation because it'll be a PDF. So you can click on those and get to those resources as well. Okay, and I'm sorry if you did not have a smartphone, I apologize. We try to gear the interactive activities based on smartphones or whether or not people can pull up an additional web browser to input the URL. So if you can't do that, go ahead and put your responses in the chat, and we can refer to that and make note of those later as well. So sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, we got some other folks from Linda Vista. Del Mar Mesa, thank you for showing. Michael Vincent here, 15 years. Gary Whaler, 1 month. Welcome, Gary. Andrew, I think you've got a place to respond to our questions here. So we're looking through the Q&A and answering questions as much as we can given the time. Let's see. And I think that's pretty much it. Says good faith and effort to participate. Okay. Does diversity include, from Marcos Camargo, does that diversity include only what people look like or about different political views? So it's not about what people look like. It's essentially about people's perspectives and their inputs that influence that. We typically hear from people who can attend our traditional evening meetings. And so we're trying to change that up to kind of accommodate other people who we're not hearing from. So it's just a whole spectrum of people, kind of what they do, what they're, what they work on, what experiences they have. So basically we're trying to hear from people's lived experiences. It's not about what people look like. It goes beyond that in terms of people's own different perspectives and hearing from them, just going beyond what they look like. So thank you for that diversity related question. When will the Park Needs Index be published for the entire city? David, hi, welcome, David. Let me follow up with Jonathan Avila in our park section and get you more something definite on when that will be completed, or in terms of what timeline we can expect. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to stop it right there so we can continue with the rest of the training. And we'll try to come back to a lot of these other questions that are relevant to the matters that we just talked about. And there's some logistic questions in here that I don't want to get into. We can definitely solve those, which are mainly about people getting their names recorded for the training, which we will do that. And this training is being recorded. So right now, let's move on to the rest of the agenda. So I want to introduce Leslie Henniger, Senior Planner. She's going to get into an overview of planning group operations via a summary of Council Policy 600-24, which provides for the standard operating procedures and responsibilities of recognized planning groups. So Leslie, go ahead and begin.
Okay, thank you, Marlon. Hi, everyone. So these are the planning group governing documents. And so the governing documents shown here relate to the planning group operations. Please refer to these documents when questions come up regarding roles and responsibilities for board members, Brown Act questions, operating procedures, indemnification, and Robert's rules. These initiatives have all had public input and participation. The city is fortunate to have dedicated community members that serve our city through their involvement in planning projects and initiatives. Tonight's training purposes is to go over the roles and responsibilities of planning groups as they serve in their advisory capacity. Briefly, Council Policy 600-24 outlines the standard operating procedures and responsibilities of recognized planning groups. The Brown Act, which is California law, guarantees the public's right to attend and participate in meetings of local legislative bodies. Planning group bylaws outline community group procedures. Indemnification ordinance protects community board members from legal liability when operating in accordance with the city policies. And finally, Robert's Rules serves as an additional resource for meeting conduct where other city policy is silent. Okay, there are 41 planning groups in the city. Some groups include more than one community planning area, but under one planning group name with members from each community. The boundaries of a community planning area are defined at the community level, although we may acknowledge neighborhoods, especially when developing land use policies for neighborhoods that are distinct within a community. Land use issues or development projects that fall close to the boundary of adjacent planning area are encouraged to receive input from the adjacent community. It is possible for the council by resolution to change the boundaries of a planning group. In considering a change, the council will take into account whether a community plan amendment or update is being processed and may change the community plan boundaries. Next slide. There we go. Council Policy 600-24 requires that planning groups comply with the Ralph M. Brown Act, the state of California's open meetings law regarding noticing and conducting meetings to ensure that they are open to the public. Groups have the option to hold in-person, virtual, or hybrid meetings at their discretion, subject to the council policy, and at a minimum must provide notice to the public, indicate how a member of the public can join a meeting, and allow members of the public to address and interact during the meeting. Agendas must be posted at a physically accessible location. Planning groups may forward agendas to the city planning department 7 calendar days in advance of the meetings for the department to post them on the city's website and distribute them through the constant contact distribution. However, this is done as a courtesy, as planning groups themselves are required to meet the noticing requirements of the Brown Act. Planning groups are to conduct meetings that are open to the public, properly noticed, and that means noticing with 72 hours prior to the meeting and must include the time and location, and in compliance with the Brown Act provisions. Planning groups must adopt rules of procedure such as Robert's Rules of Order or Rosenberg's Rules of Order. A quorum is a majority present of unvacant seats. Planning groups are encouraged to use publicly accessible websites and social media to post meeting agendas, minutes, reports, general information, and contact information, provided in a manner that is consistent with the Brown Act. Planning groups must maintain all official records for a minimum of 5 years. Voting members should be representative of the entire community within the planning group's boundaries. There is a minimum of 10 voting members, generally no more than 20, unless approved by City Council. Planning groups must develop election procedures to ensure equal participation by all members of a community. That's anyone within the boundary of a planning group. Voting, or planning area, really. Voting members' term is 8 consecutive years. Planning groups must establish operating procedures that include the requirements set forth in this policy and the terms and conditions, must ensure that the public has notice of the operations and activities of the planning group. The relationship with the city is, there's several. So A is recognized planning groups must work with city staff throughout the community planning process, including during the formation of long-range community goals, objectives, and proposals, or revisions for inclusion in a general or community plan. B, attendees at recognized planning group meetings, as well as planning group voting members, must conduct themselves professionally and refrain from disrupting the public process as set forth on the agenda. Planning groups must routinely seek community participation in the planning and implementation process to serve the best long-range interests of the community at large. Currently, planning groups receive a $500 stipend every fiscal year to facilitate operations, but they can also develop a policy for financial contributions. Groups may not charge membership dues or a fee to attend meetings. Planning group members are required to attend trainings conducted by the city to maintain eligibility and indemnification from city against legal action. Subcommittee members are also extended in indemnification. A little bit more on this page. Planning group operating procedures must include ethical, equitable, and inclusive standards for all planning group voting members and guard against planning group voting member conflicts of interest and undue influence. Next slide there. The amended council policy was adopted at City Council last week. These changes relate to planning group recognition and involve: 1, the recognition of newly formed planning groups, whereby new elections have to take place within 90 days of recognition, and the creation of an independent election committee to conduct the election. 2, allowing planning groups to have completely virtual meetings without posting teleconference locations of voting members, so long as virtual meetings are allowed in their operating procedures. And annual elections must have an in-person voting option. The remaining amendments require that planning group's annual report, which documents a planning group's accomplishments in a given year, is submitted within 14 days after the approval of the March minutes. And 4th, any amendments to planning group's operating procedures are reviewed and approved by the city planning department. Next slide. Planning groups are responsible for 1, reviewing discretionary projects that require a development permit, and 2, providing advisory recommendations on land use matters such as general plan or community plan amendments. Project applicants are not required to come before planning groups for input on or a recommendation. However, it is encouraged for applicants to attend. Planning groups should contact the applicant to make them aware when their project will be reviewed. Planning groups do not review ministerial projects, and those are projects that do not require a development permit, such as a conditional use permit, site development permit, etc. In other words, projects which do not require a decision maker to use discretion in approving a project. The city attorney's office does not advise planning groups. The assigned community planner can respond to any community plan or related question and follow up with other departments or disciplines as necessary. Land use matters that are citywide or regional in scope are heard by the Community Planners Committee, otherwise known as CPC. Their roles and responsibilities are governed by Council Policy 600-9. Planning groups are not the only venue for the public to provide input and engage with the city. Other stakeholders like community-based organizations, such as business or maintenance assessment districts, have community interests and feedback. Community input can also come from activities such as in-person events, online forums, surveys, and public hearings. Next slide. So we have a few questions. So question 1, if a planning group has 15 seats, but 2 of those seats are vacant, how many members need to be in attendance in order to conduct business, meaning have a quorum? Options are A, 8 members, B, 7 members, C, all active members of the board.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could like turn to your smartphones, you should already be on that interactive screen window to input your responses. Thank you.
Okay, this looks like, well, do we have all the answer? Everyone come in at telling? Looks close, looks close. Shall I give the answer, Marlon?
Go ahead.
Okay, the correct answer is B. A quorum is defined as the presence of a majority of the filled seats of the planning group. Since there are only 13 filled seats, only 7 members are needed to have a quorum. If a quorum is not reached, then a group can set the next date for a meeting and adjourn the meeting. So question number 2, true or false? A planning group must provide their agenda to the city 7 days in advance to comply with Brown Act noticing requirements. A, true, B, false. Okay, looks like everyone's voted. So the answer is false. The city posts and distributes planning group agendas as a courtesy to support planning groups to provide information of their meetings. It is the responsibility of each recognized planning group to comply with the Brown Act noticing requirement by posting a notice or agenda at a physically accessible location 72 hours in advance of the meeting. The agenda should also be posted on a planning group's website if one is available, and anyone requesting a copy of an agenda is required to be provided one in accordance with the Brown Act. Two more questions for you from me. So question number 3, how are voting members and attendees expected to conduct themselves during meetings? A, voting members may allow attendees to disrupt meetings over passionate issues. Or B, attendees are expected to conduct themselves professionally and refrain from disrupting the public process. Voting members are expected to treat each other, members of the community, and city staff in a professional manner. Okay, thank you. The correct answer is B. It looks like you all got it. The goal of this requirement is to help planning groups operate in a manner that is professional, respectful, and engaging to all community members. A planning group may ask the board or members of the community to leave the meeting if their disruptive conduct inhibits the progress of the meeting. This applies to ad hoc and subcommittees. Final question from me. Question 4, under what circumstances can a planning group hold a virtual meeting? A, virtual meetings are enabled under a planning group's operating procedures. B, the public has the ability to access the meeting and participate in real time. C, notice of the virtual meeting is provided. D, all of the above. All right, and you all got this one as well. The correct answer is D, all of the above. Per the recently adopted amendments to City Council, planning groups need to enable the ability to hold virtual meetings in their operating procedures, which include providing a notice of virtual meeting and allow the public to access and interact during the meeting. This also includes votes taken during the virtual meeting to be conducted by roll call. Matthew will continue the presentation, and thank you all for attending this evening.
All right, thank you, Leslie. So let's begin with advisory recommendations. Planning groups make recommendations to the city on land use, infrastructure, parks, and development projects in the community. Some specific examples of items that would go to a planning group for advisory recommendations would be the adoption of a new community plan, an amendment to a community plan or general plan, discretionary permits or actions located with the community that come before the board. This is not a requirement of the discretionary permit application process, but the city strongly encourages engagement with planning groups, the community, and neighbors of the proposed project. Planning groups may also be called upon to advise in the identification of capital improvement project infrastructure needs. Regarding deadlines, advisory recommendations on development projects that come to the board must be submitted within 7 calendar days of the planning group's recommendation. Recommendations are submitted by filling out a form provided by the Development Project Manager, or DPM, with the Development Services Department, DSD, during the initial distribution process. The form needs to be turned into DSD either by emailing the DPM or via the online portal linked on the form. For projects with an environmental impact report, the planning group should submit comments before the public review period closes. Regarding collective action, official positions and opinions of the planning group must not be established or determined by an organization other than the planning group or any individual voting member of the board. Official positions and opinions of the planning group should be established or determined collectively. Planning group voting members who wish to make their own personal public comment at a public hearing or have a personal editorial published in a newspaper can certainly do so and mention that they are members of a local planning group, but should not identify their opinions or comments as representing the planning group's official position. Social media can be used to promote awareness of planning group activities and increase community participation. However, when outside of a noticed meeting, planning group members should refrain from engaging in discussions on projects and items that may come before the board for a vote. This includes social media discussions and posts. The golden rule for social media regarding projects and items is to just not engage. This also includes email communications that provides opinions on matters that come before the planning board. Only factual information should be shared via email. Recognized planning groups must not discriminate against any person or persons by reason of race, color, sex, gender, age, creed, national origin, ancestry, sexual orientation, marital status, military or veteran status, genetic information, medical condition or physical or mental disability, or any other protected characteristic. Regarding rights and liabilities. A, the city will indemnify and the city attorney will defend a community planning group or its individual voting members acting in their advisory capacity to the city, so long as their conduct was in conformance with this policy and they are on record as having completed training. B, community planning groups are expected to ensure good faith voluntary compliance with the Brown Act and proactively cure violations themselves to prevent legal actions that would void community planning group action. C, complaints regarding alleged violations of a single planning group member are to be investigated by the planning group per the city council policy and their operating procedures. Alleged violations of multiple members or the community planning group as a whole are investigated by the city planning department. In both cases, city planning staff works cooperatively with the planning group to determine corrective action that seeks to prevent the issue from recurring and retains community planning group members on the group if possible. B, a community planning group, let's go back, thank you. A community planning group that violates this policy may forfeit its status as a recognized community planning group and lose its rights to indemnification and defense by the city. If a community planning group is unable to meet quorum and attendance for 3 consecutive months, it may be placed in temporary inactive status. All right, so here's my set of questions. First, we'll start with question 5. How long can the public comment on an agenda item go for? Are the answers A, indefinitely, B, whatever time the chair decides at the beginning of the item is appropriate, or C, 1.33 minutes? And you can go on your app now to answer this question. They should be listed in the answer section of questions as well. Okay, it seems like we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. Most people are selecting B. All right, are we ready? And the answer is B. All meetings must allow for the public to comment on issues not on the agenda, as well as an opportunity for the public to comment on agenda items. Time limits may be placed by the chair when managing the meeting agenda and should be announced during the meeting before public comments have begun. The chair can appoint someone to be timekeeper, which we recommend. Time limits are important for keeping your meetings on schedule and orderly. All right, next question. Question 6. What step or steps need to be taken in order to add an action item to the agenda during a meeting? Is it A, a 2/3 vote is needed from the planning group? B, it must be determined by a vote that immediate action is needed on the item? C, the need for action on the item came to the attention of the planning group after the agenda being posted? Or D, all of the above? Please answer through the app now. All right, I'll give you a few more seconds. And the correct answer is D, all of the above. Great job, everyone. To change an item on the planning group agenda from an informational item to an action item, all of these steps must be met to be in accordance with the Brown Act. This circumstance is rare, but there may be a time where a hearing date is quickly approaching or a project review cycle is closing soon, and an action item needs to be added to the agenda at the last minute. If this happens, all of the above steps need to be taken. All right, and a final question from me. Question 7. How can a planning group organize a special meeting? Is it A, with an email sent 2 hours before the meeting? B, chairs may call a special meeting within a 24-hour advance posted notice? Or C, with a phone call to all members of the board? You can please answer now. All right. Everyone's been actively paying attention today. That's great. The correct answer is B. The 24-hour advance notice should also include noticing the planning group members and community-specific media. But it is in the planning group's interest to notice the public with more time than the 24-hour minimum, with as much time in advance as possible. The notice shall identify the business being discussed at the meeting. No other business shall be considered at this meeting, and non-agenda public comment is not required for this type of meeting. And I will send it back to Marlon. Thank you so much for participating today.
Great, thanks, Matthew. And thank you, Leslie, for your overview on council policy. Now, that was just an overview. And I also welcome all the planning group members in attendance to go online and review Council Policy 600-24 in length and in depth to fully understand it, because we're only giving an overview at today's training. But again, you still get the training as required for council policy. So at this time, I want to open up the Q&A session. Looks like we're doing pretty good on time, so I want to open it up for some Q&A. So let's take a look. Who do we have? Let's see. Here goes from Tom. Hey, Tom Silva. Marlon, I have a question. I have another community planning group member at my house participating by using my computer. Will she be able to get credit? Sure, we can do that. Just kind of note the name of the individual also taking the training with you. And we can also follow up for any follow-up with that person. But yeah, that's fine if people are doubling up at one computer or whatnot. So that's fine. Thank you for letting us know. Hello, David. David's attending from Golden Hill. Hi, David. Can you be more specific? Shane has another question. Can you be more specific on the demographic requirements? Okay, so with council policy, when it was adopted in 2022, it did emphasize a lot of inclusion, diversity, and representation on the group in terms of improving the representation on each of the groups. And as part of everyone's planning group's annual report, it does talk about the planning groups gathering demographic data from all their voting members, especially the one, when they are on the group through the elections. And so that information is voluntary, and it deals with collecting kind of our typical data that we normally get from demographics. It could be gender, age, household income, race and ethnicity, community affiliation. Those are just some of the main ones. And we try to do that anonymously through the planning group recognition. That was a concern about collecting this information because we were requiring it for folks that were applying for recognition or the groups that were applying for recognition, especially if there were competing applications. We wanted to be able to look at and compare the demographics with each of those applications. So with planning groups being recognized, it is voluntary. And so we need to look at ways to gather that information anonymously. So what we did previously was to basically submit just separate sheets of paper with a lot of those questions for each of the members to fill out. And then someone would collect that and then report that in the aggregate for the planning group. So we're looking at, like I said, various demographic categories, again, like age, race and ethnicity, household income, just to name a few. So those are the kinds of information we're looking at. Now, there's other pieces of information that a planning group has a discretion to add. And I would welcome everyone to look at the census or SANDAG's. I think they did away with the data server at some other kind of open portal data service. So take a look at that because they have information based on each community planning area to help you look at the demographics for your community and compare as well. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Tamara Ratcliffe. I am newly elected to a board, recently disbanded, and I'm running for the newly recognized community planning group and just making sure it is beneficial that I continue this training and won't have to do this again if elected again. Oh yeah, okay. So yes, the answer would be you do not have to take this training again. I understand, and for a lot of folks who are not aware, I believe you were talking about Uptown. So through the planning group recognition process, the existing planning group was replaced by a new group per the decision by the city council. As new members of a group that will potentially fill with new members, any of those potential members can take this training and still get credit for it if they happen to be elected on the group. So in a way, you are taking this training in advance, and I welcome any of the potential candidates for the new Uptown planning group to go ahead and take it. Again, we will have the alternative training available for anyone to take and get credit for. So that can mean existing planning group members, people who might be a candidate for the upcoming Uptown Community Planning Group, subcommittee members, because as Leslie mentioned and Matthew mentioned that subcommittee members should also follow Council Policy 600-24, especially if they also want to be protected under the city for indemnification purposes. Here's a question from Matthew Wang. Matthew, is that Matthew Wang from Claremont? What specific projects are brought in front of the community planning groups? Does it depend on the community planning group bylaws operating procedures? Is there a specific authorization for community planning groups to review certain projects in the ordinance code? Okay, to answer your question, the specific projects that come before the planning groups are discretionary projects that require a decision maker to use their discretion to review and approve that project. So we're looking at projects that are approved by staff. That is a process 2 level. Process 3, that's a hearing officer approval. So that's a senior individual at the city that reviews all the project applications and makes approvals based on findings in the municipal code to approve those projects. And then there's a process 4, which is planning commission, projects that go before the planning commission that require, say, conditional use permits, site development permits, plan development permits. Anytime there's a deviation to standard in the land development code or the municipal code through like a plan development permit. those types of things are heard before the planning commission. And then city council, those are also discretionary projects that are provided to the planning group to provide their advisory recommendation. And those can involve recommendations on community plan updates, street vacations, what else? I know there's some other projects that are like other land use plans, are just to name a few. So discretionary projects are the ones that come before the community planning groups to review. And it's not based on what's listed in the planning group's operating procedures. It's based on the municipal code setting up those reviewing processes. Let's see. Michael Westmoreland. I think Michael, that's Michael from Chollas Valley and Canto. How do we ensure all voices are being heard by the city? Good question. That's something that we definitely want to strive for. How do we make sure we do that? I mentioned before the Equity Forward program, where we're trying to build equity in our planning process to hear from everyone. And that's not just techniques involving our traditional meetings. I mentioned that we want to hear from everyone's lived experiences and go to where the people are. So it might not be a traditional meeting. It might go to maybe a cultural fair or street fair happening in the community, or some other type of, local neighborhood organization organized event that brings a lot of local people to the event. And that's where we can kind of definitely leverage that to hear from other people who typically don't attend our meetings. I also mentioned that we're working on an inclusive public engagement guide that's going to be a guide on how to better implement inclusive public engagement and participation among the city departments that do a lot of outreach with the community, and kind of helping them with their techniques about outreaching to people and reaching to people that we really need to hear from. So stay tuned for more on that. You can check our Equity Forward Planning webpage. You can just do a quick Google search, it should pop up. I don't have the website on me right now, but you should be able to find that and read more about how we're reaching out more equitably to others. There's a question from Kalada Salam Alaji about Sandag. Who decides the work that Sandag does to our streets? So Sandag is a separate regional agency. They have their own authority in terms of working on projects. Certain things, it all depends. I don't have all the details on that. We can certainly look into that more. Not all the things go through their agency. Things that require our purview, we may have to review and provide comment on that, but that's a little bit of a complicated answer. We could follow up on that one later. I have a question here from Tamara Radcliffe. I'm just checking out to see how we're doing on time. How do we determine diversity? Is it primarily age, income levels, and home ownership? That's just one of many demographic factors that we would look at, or a planning group should look at, in terms of measuring diversity and representation on your planning group. I would, as a recommendation, would seek to understand those demographics on your planning board, and then look at the census or Sandag's data portal to compare your demographics against the demographics being shown community-wide on Sandag's website or in the census. So it gives you a good idea in terms of, proportions and representation on your group. Now, it might not be exact, because like, 2 people in a group of a certain ethnicity or age or household income could equate to a certain large percentage on your group, but that might not be equal or the same as how it would be compared to the community. So there's a lot of things you want to look at, but the numbers give a good idea in terms of doing a proportional analysis about how many people are on your group and the types of categories that they apply to. Let's see here. Let's take one more. We're at 6:03. Here's a question from Kevin Sullivan. I wonder if Kevin, this is the same Kevin I met at CPC last night. Brown Act, virtual meetings, posting in a physical location. So yes, one of our quiz questions was about whether or not if the city posts or distributes a planning group's agenda, does that comply with the Brown Act? The answer is no. The responsibility is of the planning group to be able to post their notices in compliance with the Brown Act. And all that needs to do or happen is to post your notice or agenda in a physically accessible location, like a library, maybe a rec center, if that's pretty accessible, like a bulletin board. Some rec centers have public bulletin boards that are open to the public where they could just pin up an agenda on there. So long as that's up there in the public and the public can access it, and it's up there for 72 hours or 7 days. I mean, not 7 days, 3 days in advance of the meeting. So that constitutes the physical location of the Brown Act. Now, Kevin, you mentioned virtual meetings. In the Brown Act, prior to the council policy amendment, with virtual meetings, you have to comply with the Brown Act noticing. But in addition, if you have voting members on the planning group that wanted to attend a meeting virtually, you would have to publicly post the individual teleconference location of each of those voting members to the public, or put that on the agenda, because the Brown Act had required that voting members that are attending virtually have to have their teleconference locations posted publicly and allow the public access to that location, whether it's a home office, your house, a hotel that you're staying, a place of work like an office. They would have to have public access to that location and interact at the meeting. Now, with the amendments to the council policy that were adopted last week, we made an exception to that. So if planning groups want to have virtual meetings and have their voting members attend virtually, they can do that so long without posting their teleconference locations on the agenda. They can do that so long as their operating procedures enable the ability to provide virtual meetings, and that their annual elections that happen in March, offer an in-person voting option. So therein lies some changes, and we will have that adopted language in the form of strikeout underline of the council policy up on the website so that you can take a look and see where those changes have occurred. Okay, so right now we are at 6:06 and I think we're on time. So right now, let's have a 10-minute break for everybody. Thanks to everybody for attending with us so far. Before we break, I just wanted to share some resources that we have for you. So a lot of the information that we talked about can be found on these webpage links. So if any time you have a question about planning group operations or anything like that, please feel free to email sdplanninggroups@sandiego.gov. This is basically our universal email for planning groups and planning group related questions, inquiries. That's the same email that we receive complaints, that we receive annual reports, that we receive the rosters for the planning groups every year. So please remember that and just feel free to just always send us any questions to that email. The Community Planning Group Resources webpage, this is the webpage that will host the instructions for the alternative training. So you can tell your other members who weren't able to attend tonight to go check out that webpage, and that in the instructions and the link to taking this alternative training will be located there. We also have other resources on there, like how to get reimbursed regarding the $500 stipend that planning group members or planning groups get every fiscal year. So that's on there as well. Filing your planning group annual reports, we have a link to that. So those are due. So all the planning groups who need to submit an annual report, please do that. The annual report portal, planning annual report portal is an online application kind of format where you fill in the information and you have the ability to upload all your minutes or any relative documents regarding the work that planning groups have undertaken in the last year. Our community planning group contact list is here also. Heidi had mentioned if you had any questions, your first point of contact with planning group operational issues is your community planner. You can check out that link, and all the communities are listed there, information on where they meet and who your assigned community planner is on there. So that's a great resources to find out who you need to talk to. Again, you could always go to sdplanninggroups@sandiego.gov as well. Brown Act resources. We got some information about the Brown Act from the Attorney General, and also what I think is a great resources, a summary of the Brown Act and with some helpful examples from the League of California Cities. I believe that's the link to the most recent January 2024 edition. It's got a lot of great information on Brown Act, holding virtual meetings. Again, through the council policy, the council policy subjects community planning groups to the Brown Act. And through the council policy, we can make changes about how the planning groups comply with the Brown Act. So for instance, with the virtual meeting, we made that change to allow planning group voting members to attend virtually without posting their teleconference locations, because we've heard from a lot of people saying that's a safety concern. A lot of folks have constraints in terms of their lives about having time in the evening. They've got childcare issues, constraints of finding transportation, or they may feel that attending evening meetings are kind of not safe for them. So we wanted to be able to encourage more public participation, because that's kind of what we heard back when all the planning groups were using virtual means of having meetings. So the changes to the council policy related to the Brown Act allow us to do that. And then the last final thing I wanted to leave you guys with is the constant contact link. And for all of you who want to know what's going on in your respective communities about public hearings, notices on discretionary projects that are coming through, any initiatives from the city, anything in kind of like in the public realm that's going forward for decision making, I advise you to check out Constant Contact. All you have to do is provide your name and email, and then check the boxes of the things that you're interested in hearing from, and you'll get those notices every month when they come out. So I think that's a great resource. I think you should avail yourself of that. So with that, kind of said a mouthful there, let's go have, our break, and let's come back at about 6:20. I'll give you guys 10 minutes. So I'll come back at 6:20. Thank you. All right, everybody, I'm gonna get this presentation or this training continued. I'm gonna ask that everybody come back. Hope you had a chance to get something to drink or eat or stretch. And during that time, some of us have been answering some of the questions in the Q&A. So thank you for your patience. There's a lot of good questions out there. I'd also like to remind everyone that if you could change your screen names, you should be able to do that by right mouse clicking on the little dots on your window frame and renaming yourself. Because there's some folks in there with like anonymous names, and we won't know who that is, especially if Zoom is taking that name, recording that name as such in the background on a transcript or in some other type of printed form. So in order for you to get credit for that training, please change your name. Yeah, we don't need to know your full name. You could do first initial, last name, or first name, last initial, or just put your planning and then add your planning group name or community if that's also helpful too. So just advise you to do that. Okay, so right now we're at 6:23. We're just a little bit behind schedule, but I think we made up a lot for that earlier on. Let's get on to the next section of our training, and I would like to introduce, well, basically, let me just talk about what's up next. We're going to hear from staff from the Development Services Department on the development review process, followed by a presentation on the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and then we're going to round it out at the end with some final Q&A and conclude. So right now, I'd like to introduce Martha Blake, who is the Development Services Supervising Development Project Manager in the Project Management Division, to talk about community planning groups and development project review. So Martha, please take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Marlon said, I'm Martha Blake. I'm one of two supervising development project managers we have in my division of development services. Next slide. Before we get into too much detail, here are some online resources for you to use in your roles as a planning group member or just a part of the general public. The link at the bottom of the page called Discretionary Review Process is one that I use quite often in my job. It includes links to municipal code sections for specific permit types, which gives me quick access to that information. And it includes the findings are in those code sections. And there's just some good description of the discretionary review process on that page. Next. To give you a little zoom in on a couple of the links that were provided, this is our open portal, our online portal where people can look at project informations. I know it's a little hard to read, but when you get a copy of the slideshow, hopefully you'll be able to see it better. It shows how you can look up projects or search applications in our online system by permit number, project number, or street address. It helps you if you see a posted notice in your community and you want to know what's going on. You can look here to see what's happening on that site and verify that there is a permit in case you're wondering if there is a valid permit. Next. Another useful resource that we have online is our GIS and zoning map link. You can look up every zone for, you can look up the zone for every site within the city of San Diego, including overlay zones such as coastal zones and airport overlay zones. I want to note that as the city adopts new plans or policies, such as a new Mira Mesa community plan or complete communities regulations, those may not get updated in the main base layer, but there are instructions for how you can search for that updated zoning or overlay zones with those updated adoptions. Next. So in terms of project processing, we have different approval types. I know some of you are familiar with them. There are ministerial permits. Ministerial permits are for simple projects. For example, if you get your water heater replaced, you need a ministerial permit. You're typically not even going to interact with our department on something like that. Remodeling, electrical, plumbing permits, those are all examples of ministerial permits. Ministerial permits cover any development that is by right. If you meet the criteria of the regulations, you will get a permit. No discretion is involved. Staff will review the project you've proposed. If it complies with the applicable regulations, the permit is issued. Ministerial permits are not subject to appeal, and there are no public noticing requirements or planning group input on ministerial permits. Discretionary permits are what development project managers, also known as DPMs, in my section work on. There are many types of discretionary permits. We've touched on some of those today, like conditional use permits, coastal development permits, tentative maps, right-of-way vacations are some examples. These permits require a decision maker to use their discretion to approve the permit, which includes making specific permit findings. These approvals are appealable to a higher decision maker in accordance with the municipal code. As part of this process, the decision maker considers any input provided by the community planning group. Next. For process levels, the permits are also subject to a decision process level. A process 1 is a ministerial approval. There's no public notice, and these approvals are not appealable. Process 2 through 5 projects are all discretionary and all require public notices at the time an application is submitted. Public notices are required to be sent to property owners and occupants within 300 feet of the project site. Process 3, 4, and 5 projects will also have publicly noticed hearings, which are required to comply with that same 300-foot noticing. Typically, the higher the process level, the more complex a project is. Process 2 projects are decided at the city staff level with no public hearing, but people should contact the assigned project manager to receive a notice of decision on a Process 2 project if you're interested. Once that notice of decision is made, the DPM will email you that notice. Process 3 projects are acted on by the city hearing officer. I know Marlon touched on this a little bit earlier in the Q&A portion. The hearing officer is a Development Services Department employee who was not involved in the review of the project. We currently have 3 people who act as the hearing officer. All are senior planners in the current planning section of Land Development Review Division. A Process 4 project is a planning commission decision. The planning commission is a volunteer position nominated by the mayor and approved by city council to those positions. And finally, a Process 5, which is a city council action and is acted on by all of the council members. Process 2, 3, and 4 projects are all appealable. A Process 5 project is not, as that is the highest level of decision we have at the city. Next. So what is the role of the DPM? In my specific section, we currently have 28 project managers, and we manage the bulk of private and public discretionary projects. That includes managing the multidisciplinary review team of city staff and acting as the city's single point of contact for both the applicant and the public. We prepare all written correspondence, reports, and documents and present the project at city public hearings. Our role is to be neutral about the project. Our role is to advocate for the process and not the project itself. Outside of my section, we also have DPMs who are focused on projects in the downtown community and others who work only on wireless or telecom facilities. And we've recently have implemented ministerial and engineering DPMs who manage some but not all of the ministerial permits, but you typically would not interact with them except as an applicant. Next. So how do we work with the planning group? The planning group recommendation is really a valuable tool for both the applicant and the decision makers. For each discretionary project that we have, documents will be sent to the community planning group for review. We used to send these out as paper, but we now send those out electronically. And I want to make sure that each planning group knows to look out for emails from a noreply@sandiego.gov email account to ensure those documents are reaching your group. I know sometimes they go to spam because it's a group email account. So please make sure you are finding those emails. As staff completes reviews of the project, the DPM will copy the planning group on the project assessment letter. We prepare an assessment letter for each review cycle, and that will include all staff comments. The letter also identifies the process level of the project, what permits are needed. And typically we want to get those letters out about 5 weeks after a project is submitted, but it can take longer depending on when reviews are completed or questions we may have internally. As outlined here, we're really looking for input from the CPG for how a project does or could comply with plan policies. We sometimes receive recommended conditions for the project that may be incorporated as a recommended condition. And what we really want is your complete recommendation so that we can communicate exactly what you have voted on and recommended to the decision maker in our reports. So please make sure that you send back that recommendation to the city so we have the official recommendation from you. We do sometimes hear from our customers, oh, hey, we got unanimous approval last night. And I'm like, that's nice. I need to hear it from the official planning group. I know someone asked in the Q&A, I saw someone asked a question about how we encourage people to interact with the planning group. And it's included in each of our letters. We provide the contact information, ask them to reach out. If we know when we get a project back in that they haven't contacted the planning group, we'll ask them, well, are you planning to? Please let us know if you're going to go out there. Sorry. No one from the planning group is required to attend public hearings, but you may want to send someone from your planning group if you're particularly interested in a project or really want to get the group's recommendation across to the decision maker. Or if you think there may be questions about your recommendation and you would like to be there to answer them. I will say the Planning Commission does like to hear directly from the planning groups when maybe it's a more controversial project. Appeals, I know someone raised this as well in the, excuse me, the question and answer. So Information Bulletin 505 spells out how you can file an appeal of a decision. If you wish to appeal the decision, you really want to be clear as to whether you are appealing the project or the environmental determination or both. And please be specific as to what you are appealing the project on. The more information you can present in the appeal, the better response you'll get. I will also note that there are times when not every environmental determination is appealable, especially if it was exempt and the time to appeal that decision has passed. So you'll want to pay attention to any appeal dates listed on any notices you see. Next slide. Here's a list of some additional resources. So I have posted here the hearing officer page, planning commission page, and city council page. So you can check for the agendas, reports, and minutes that are available online. Also, again, links to the development services department, location and hours, and just general questions. So at this time, that completes my review. And if you have any questions, I think we may have some time now, or Marlon, I'll leave it up to you if you want to do questions now or wait.
Let's have an opportunity to ask some questions, just a couple regarding development review. So let me look through here real quick and see if I can find a couple. Application, hold on, I'm looking through looking for development service related ones. So you described the appeal process for, you talked about the appeal process, but here's a question that mentioned, my planner has stated the planning department encourages applicants of ministerial projects to come to the community planning group. How exactly is the applicant encouraged?
So on ministerial projects, I don't know who would be doing that. There's no project manager assigned to that. I don't know if there is a planner who is maybe looking at a permit, who's maybe thinking it might be a good idea. But again, what we do is with discretionary projects, we list and note that the applicant is encouraged to seek a recommendation from the planning group and provide the planning group contact information for them to reach out. And we do follow up and ask questions. And I do have Michael Prinz, who is a program manager in the land development review. And Michael, are you aware of on ministerial projects being encouraged to do that?
Generally, no. If there are certain larger development projects and that are in the conceptual phases, some staff in the city, whether it's through the council office, the community planner, or development services staff, may encourage the group to reach out to a particular planning group or community to just provide informational updates on sort of a planned development, but there's no specific requirement, and as part of a permit review process for ministerial development, it is not required to provide notice or attend a community planning group meeting. And I know there are a couple of comments in the chat sort of questioning or asking sort of about the ministerial process more broadly. And that really refers to the process by which a project is reviewed for conformance with all applicable regulations of the Land Development Code. So typically what you would see is a building permit application for a project, be that a single family residential unit up to a multifamily, multi-structure or multi-story project. That building permit application is reviewed for all applicable regulations in chapters 11 through chapter 15 of the Land Development Code. This includes base zone regulations in chapter 13, separately regulated uses depending upon the type of use, environmentally sensitive lands, climate action plan regulations, affordable housing or inclusionary housing regulations, just to name a few. All of those applicable regulations are reviewed against the plan submittal that is provided. And if all of those regulations are conformed to with the development submittal, then that can be reviewed and approved at the staff level, what we call ministerially, without the requirement to be noticed or sent to the public.
Thanks.
I've got a question here, Martha, from
Yeah.
Tom. I have a specific question. Is the proposed multi-story residential project adjacent to the College Rolando Library a ministerial processing process? Not sure if we are familiar with the project that's adjacent.
I am familiar with that one. There is a current development project that is proceeding through a ministerial review process at the site adjacent to the College Rolando Library.
A lot of questions I think the DST staff answered on what constitutes a ministerial project. Here's a question from Felicity from Linda Vista. Once a recommendation is made by a community planning group and the form is filled out, who is responsible for distributing the DST's community planning committee distribution form?
So that gets sent to a centralized site. We look for it. Sometimes they are then emailed directly to us, but I will say that when project managers are drafting their work, we hunt it down. If I can't find it in my system, I reach out to the planning department to see if it's been posted on the website. If I can't find it there, I reach out to the planner assigned to that community planning group. And sometimes I will reach out to the chair of the planning group themselves to try and get that form in when I don't see it.
And then let's take one more. I have a question here from David Modi from Kensington Talmadge. Process 2, is there a way for community planning groups to send in information to the staff decision maker?
Yeah, so on process 2's, the development project manager serves as the decision maker. They're the ones issuing the notice of decision. So send any information to the assigned project manager.
Oh, and I think this is a good one too, from Bob Simonson. Is process 5 appealable to the coastal zone?
That is a good question. And the answer is, if it is in the coastal appealable zone where Coastal Commission has jurisdiction over a permit, then yes. And Michael, that's correct. If it's appealable, if it's, sometimes they take jurisdiction, but Michael. On
Yeah, the answer, well, most of my answers to every question is it depends, but Martha's answer is generally correct that if it's within the appealable area of the coastal overlay zone, that decision can be appealed to the Coastal Commission. If it's in the Coastal Commission's permit jurisdiction, it is the Coastal Commission that issues the coastal development permit. And if it's within the city's jurisdiction, then there is no appeal to the Coastal Commission. It's the city's process for appeal.
All right, thank you very much, staff from DST, Michael and Martha. Let's continue with the last portion of our training, which deals with the California Environmental Quality Act. And we have Becky Malone from our department with a short overview on CEQA. So Becky, please take it away.
Excellent. They saved the best for last. I am here to talk about the California Environmental Quality Act. All discretionary decisions of the city are subject to environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or as we call it, CEQA. The basic purposes of CEQA are to inform governmental decision makers and the public about the potential significant environmental effect of proposed activities, to identify the ways that environmental damage can be avoided or significantly reduced, to prevent significant avoidable damage to the environment by requiring changes in projects through the use of alternatives or mitigation measures when the governmental agency finds the changes to be feasible, and to disclose to the public the reasons why a governmental agency approved a project in the manner the agency chose if significant environmental effects are involved. CEQA establishes a duty for public agencies to avoid or minimize environmental damage where feasible. A public agency should not approve a project as proposed if there are feasible alternatives or mitigation measures available that would substantially lessen any significant effects that the project would have on the environment. Environmental documents like environmental impact reports and negative declarations have a public review period. CPGs can prepare written comments during this period for which the city must consider and prepare a response. Comments on the environmental document should speak to the adequacy of the environmental document. Only environmental issues should be included in a comment letter to the city on an environmental document. If your comment is on a project or a plan itself, it is best to provide those comments to the development project manager or community planner. Per CEQA, city environmental staff in the city planning department, development services department, or other city departments are only required to respond to comments raising significant environmental issues that are received during the noticed comment period. For this slide and the next, I will be using an EIR for a community plan update as my example environmental review document. An EIR for a CPU is an environmental analysis that considers environmental impacts pursuant to CEQA and assesses the potential environmental impacts of implementing the plan. A CPU EIR is not a planning document or a regulatory requirement. The EIR does not provide policy guidance or regulations for the community. An EIR also does not consider impacts outside of those required by CEQA. An EIR identifies mitigation measures and alternatives to reduce or avoid any potential significant impacts. A CPU EIR is not an implementation plan for the CPU or any other kind of plan. Again, this slide and the last used a CPU EIR as an example, but this is true of any environmental document that your CPG may comment on. If your comment is on the plan or project itself, it is best to send those comments or recommendations to the project manager for that plan or project. Comments on an environmental document should address the adequacy of the environmental analysis. This link provides information about the environmental process, and I can take questions on the environmental process.
Great, thanks, Becky. Let's go look and see what kind of questions we have for you in the Q&A. Here's a question. I do not recall the scoping process outreach to community planning groups. Any comment on this process? Thanks for the clear presentation.
When we start an environmental, an EIR, when we are going to do an environmental impact report, we will send out a notice of preparation, and we will send that notice to the community planning group, the applicable community planning group. And when we put out a notice of preparation, we generally always do a scoping meeting. And so the CPGs should be notified anytime there's going to be a project that will impact their community.
And Becky, is it true that for scoping meetings, that's an opportunity for the planning group and the public to identify issues that should be analyzed as part of the environmental document?
That's exactly it, Marlon.
Okay. All right. Here's another question from Vicky Touchstone. Vicky, hi. Are process 2 projects subject to CEQA?
Yeah, I might bring Martha back in for this one.
Yes, they are subject to CEQA review. They may be exempt, but first we go through the review to determine that.
Okay, and then I think that is the extent of our SQL-related questions for Martha, for Becky. What is our time? We're at 6:47. Let me see if there's any others that'll pop up. Looking through here. Okay, as an appeal, complete community projects. Okay, great. And I don't see any. And I think that's it for all the SQL-related questions, Becky. Thank you very much. We're at 6:48. We're trying to get you guys out of here at 7. So let's go ahead and hold on, let me close this out and just kind of get us to kind of overall questions and answers, or just overall questions that you guys have related to the training overall. So a lot of the questions that I did look through in the Q&A were more logistical. So again, this training is being recorded. Zoom does record the information from all the attendees in terms of emails that are recorded for attendance. I did ask folks to change your screen names if you can to something that would identify you, or your email, so that we can better track that. Some of the individuals I had shared a link to because they weren't able to go in in other words, they used my name, but they did include in the chat or in the Q&A who they actually really are. So thank you, David Swearens. I got you down for that. So thanks for joining us tonight. So if you want to do that in the Q&A, just put your name in there so we can double check that. That would be great. And again, there was a question about whether or not if we were able to participate in the live polling or the Wordle interactive exercise, if we still get credit for the training. Yes, the answer is yes. The main thing is that you were in attendance for the duration of this training, where we did share information with you on council policy, development review process, as well as the SQL process. And that you were able to listen and understand some of the questions we were asking for the polling, and understand how the correct answers were applied. So yes, so the answer is you do not have to have participated in the interactive activities, although we did welcome everyone who did and who did provide responses in the Q&A or the chat. Thank you very much for your effort with that. Okay, let's go back to the questions and see what we got in terms of answering any of them for y'all, since we have some time. How can we confirm we were shown as a participant? Okay, so that's coming from someone labeled as anonymous attendee. So again, please, if you can change your name, basically go to the 3 dots on your window frame right now, click on that or click on that, and there should be an option for you to rename yourself. If that's not possible, again, in the Q&A chat, just put under ask a question, under the question field, just put your name on there and then we can follow up with you. Hi, Victoria. Hi, Marlon. I have Tamara and Kelly and John signed on under my name. Okay, thank you, Victoria. We'll get those guys accounted for in the training. Again, how do we see verification credit for our attendance? We will be providing a list to each of the chairs of the planning groups of all the folks who attended, and so they can share that with their members. And if any members feel that they have been inadvertently left out, we can certainly have the chairs contact us about that, and we could follow up and see kind of where the discrepancy is, or just follow up with the person just to verify that they did attend the training. Okay, Brian, I got you. Brian Woodhouse, Navajo resident, we got you down. Same thing with you, Jean-Paul Schwartz, business seat at Cortez Hill. Richard Diaz from Eastern area. I'm just going to go through a lot of these people just to reassure them that we do have them on their training. Andrew Weiss, got you down. Kelly Richard, we mentioned it was under Victoria Labruzzo's link. We got you down, John Hillman. Deanna Rich, we got you down from Torrey Pines Community Planning Group. Teresa Tebbets, we got you down. Christina Bambino, we got you down, you're present. William Hooper, sorry about that, we got you down. Bill Crooks, hey, how you doing? Bill, we got you down. Johnny Swanson, Alex Zukas, Robert LaRose from North Park, Philip Listen. Oh, hello, and then we got your email down there too. Corla, hi Corla, we got you down. Okay, so the anonymous attendee, we got you down, we're triple checking, so you should be logged in as Wesley from Kearney Mesa, we got you down. Thank you, anonymous attendee Wesley. Andrew Hollingworth, Becky, if you're still there, how does a community planning group trigger an environmental impact review? So it wouldn't be the planning group that would trigger it. I believe there's a checklist in terms of how projects are considered such and whether or not they are a project and what types of impacts they would result in the community. So that determines kind of the level of environmental review. But I don't know if Becky's still here, but we can definitely follow up with her, Andrew, to get you more of a specific answer on that. David Ortiz, we got you down. Robert Steck from Ohio. Hey, Robert. Hey, Bob. Got you down. Reg Kobzi, we got you down from Scripps Ranch. Gary Whaley, good stuff. Okay, we got you down. Alexander Petrovich, when searching applications, you are no longer allowed to search by just the zip code, which was an option several months ago. I don't know if that's in relation to searching for projects on OpenDSD or something like that, but we could certainly follow up with Michael and Martha on that. Any questions? We got you anonymous. Brian Matthews. I do not see my planning group listed on the major listing of all the different planning groups. Choice View Planning Group help and why? So Choice Valley or Choice View, is that part of which probably was Encanto? We can look into that. And we know that a lot of folks have been looking for Encanto. That's Choice Valley now. Scott Kessler. Hey, Scott, did I understand that this is optional for applicants to appear at planning groups if their project is discretionary? Yes, that's correct. So the planning groups can certainly hear their project because it is a discretionary project. They do get to review those and provide a recommendation. It is optional for the applicants to be there to present. However, we do highly encourage applicants to go there so that they can benefit from hearing from the planning group regarding any concerns regarding their project, or if the project is supported by the planning group. I think that'd be great to be a feather in the cap for the applicants, knowing that the community has supported the project. But also, again, it is a benefit to the applicant to understand concerns early on. It's better to probably be able to deal with that prior to going to hearing instead of having to go to hearing and then being turned away because the project was failing in some account based on some concerns that were raised. So that probably wouldn't be the only thing that would say would turn a project away from hearing. But there's other factors. So again, we encourage applicants to go to the planning group. They're not required. And if a planning group does hear a project and the applicant refuses to show up, just be sure to provide notice on the agenda and also provide that agenda and notice to the applicant so that they know. Let's see, Michael Singleton. Hey, Mike. Complete community projects appear to be all ministerial. However, if there is a potential of a historic resource, it seems to become discretionary. Does it become discretionary if it just goes to HRB or if it is designated? Okay, that one's a little outside of my purview, Mike. I'm gonna have to follow up. Oh, Martha, do you know something about that?
If a discretionary permit is triggered, such as a site development permit for a historic resource, then it would be discretionary. All permits get consolidated to the highest level approval. So if you have 4 permits that would typically be a process 2 and 1 permit that's a process 5, all the permits get elevated to the process 5 level. They get consolidated. That's part of our code.
Thank you, Martha. Let's see. Oh, here's another one, Martha, from Bob. Are ADUs process 2 in the coastal zone?
I am going to ask Michael to respond to that because that codes and regulations have been updated recently, and it's hard for me to keep track if Michael's still available. Let's come back to that. Let me try and get him.
Okay, all right. Oh, here's a question from Don Severance for Martha specifically. If a project development manager on a discretionary project, and then they mention here, Cannon Street Pocket Park, refuses to answer any questions on status or such, who else from the department may be contacted?
If you know the supervisor, please reach out to the supervisor. If not, you can contact me and I can try and find the right person to answer the question if it's not me. It looks like Michael had to hop off. So we can follow up on that question about which process level the ADUs are in the coastal zone.
Okay, and Martha, I got some more for you here. How do you work in conjunction with code enforcement?
So code enforcement is part of the development services department. When we have, let's say, projects that need permits because they had code violations, the applicant is required to submit the notice of violation to ensure we're addressing everything. We also have conversations regularly with code enforcement to verify if something is a true violation of a permit on some complaints that they get. And when we have questions about a project that is in because of code violations, we will reach out to the staff and the code enforcement, or building and land use enforcement. It's now called Blue, but we will reach out to them to get additional information as needed.
And then here's a question maybe we both can answer. If a commercial project was approved several years ago but has never been built, what if the developer wants to add residential uses? Does it come back to the planning group for review?
If it needs a new permit, yes. Also, if it's been several years and they didn't utilize their permit within the utilization period, they may need to start over with a new permit. We have expirations in our development permits. It's typically 36 months from the approval date, but people can get extensions on those permits.
Okay. Here's a question from Corinne Salcido. I can answer this one. Is it possible to get a copy of the presentation and recording a link? Yes, so we'll have the recording posted on the Community Planning Group Resources webpage. I showed that link on the presentation. But if you want to also email me, I can send it to you directly. So I can do that. And then Martha, if you're still there, is the city no longer sending discretionary plans and assessment letters? It's been very inconsistent lately.
We do still send them. I will say we have been playing around with how we're sending them. There were some difficulties with some of the electronic systems that we were using with our update. So we have a new process for distributing those. I will say if you're not getting anything, please feel free to reach out to me directly and let me know that you haven't seen anything or are not getting them, and we can make sure that people are sending them out correctly.
Okay, and I think that is going to be our last question. It is 7 o'clock. I don't want to keep you guys over than you need to. Again, thank you very much to Martha, Becky, Leslie, and Matthew for the presentation. And then overall, thank you for everyone attending tonight for this training. And thank you for taking your time out to attend and be with us and answer some questions. Unfortunately, we will get to everybody's questions, but please feel free to follow up either with me or to the SD Planning Groups at sandiego.gov email, and we can certainly address those inquiries. So again, just for those who are attending this training, we have your attendance recorded, so you will get credit for the training. Lists will be forwarded to each respective community planning group chair so that they can follow up with those members who will need to take the training, and then also verify whether or not we accurately got everyone down as taking the training. Again, we will make this recording along with the online training available on the city's website. That's Planning Group Resources webpage. And then so this concludes our training on council policy, the city planning department's work program, as well as the processes involving development services and CEQA. Again, I'd like to thank all the attendees for your time, as well as the staff who helped on this training tonight. Thank you very much and good night.